In previous years, the iPhone Pro Max model has sought to set itself apart from the rest of the iPhone pack by offering extra features. But for 2021, it's much more of a level playing field because all it offers over the regular Pro model is a bigger screen and bigger battery life. So the question is, for 2021, does the Pro Max's bigger is better approach still make best sense? I'm Cam Bunton from Pocket-lint, and this is our review of the iPhone 13 Pro Max. And while you're here, if you could hit the like button, tap subscribe and the notification bell, that would be fabulous. The iPhone 13 Pro Max features a near identical design to the 12 Pro Max from 2020. There are some differences, but you'll have to look very closely to spot them. On the rear, you still get that frosted glass design that comes in 4 grown-up colours: graphite, gold, silver, and new for 2021, Sierra Blue. That's the one we have here, and it's really lovely. The phone still features the 3 raised camera lenses in an enclosure on the back, and both the enclosure and the lenses are physically bigger than before. Due to the bigger size of the phone itself, though, the setup doesn't look as dominating as it does on the smaller Pro. But they are still bigger and more protruding than those found on the previous 12 Pro Max. So if you're upgrading, you'll need a new case as a result. These subtle changes mean the 13 Pro Max is just as solid and weighty a design as it's ever been, complete with water and dust proofing to IP68 levels, and is somewhat blunt in its design. There are no soft edges really, it's all hard, straight, polished edges. And it's rather big. Just like the 12 Pro Max that came before it, it doesn't slip as easily into a trouser pocket or purse as the smaller models might, and it's comfortably one of the heaviest phones on the market. On the front, the big change is that notch which perforates the display. It's now much narrower. Present since the iPhone X, it hasn't been retired for a punch hole or under-display camera yet, as it still houses an array of sensors for Face ID in addition to the front-facing camera. The new notch design does afford more space for a full-screen experience, but the space on either side of it isn't fully utilised by 2021's iOS 15 software. Icons are simply bigger, rather than the newfound space being used better. But trust us when we say you'll want to see as much of this 6.7-inch OLED screen as possible, thanks to the inclusion of Apple's Pro Motion technology. This technology allows the display to automatically adapt its refresh rate depending on what content you have on it. It starts all the way down at 10 Hz and goes all the way up to 120. Just like you'll find in some of the top Android phones from the likes of Oppo, Samsung and OnePlus. That's not only good for smooth playback though, it means better battery life potential as well, because the software can determine how much power the screen needs for the task at hand, and adapts accordingly. And those efficiencies make quite a big difference. Apple claims the iPhone 13 Pro Max can now offer up to 28 hours of video playback on a single charge. That's like all of the Mission Impossible movies played back to back, including the one that hasn't come out yet. And it certainly makes for a smoother experience, although just as some people can't see the benefits of Ultra HD over HD until it's pointed out, some possibly won't notice the upgrade they are enjoying. Now, we're in Pro territory here, and Apple is clearly aiming the display at those who care about these things. But we still can't help feeling we would have liked to see Apple Pencil's stylus support. Especially given the size of the screen on offer here, it would just make sense. Of course, the 13 Pro Max features many of the usual display tech buzzwords like wide color, DCI-P3 gamut, True Tone, a 2 million to 1 contrast ratio, and up to 1200 nits maximum brightness. All that means, generally speaking, is it looks fantastic. Whether you're gaming or watching your favourite HDR content on Netflix, Apple TV or Disney+, it will look great. Colours are vibrant, blacks are deep and inky, and the bright spots are bright, without losing any detail. Now moving on to hardware and performance, and a flagship phone isn't a flagship phone without a flagship processor, and this time it comes in form of the A15 Bionic. While it is the fastest iPhone processor to date, the change over the 12 Pro Max isn't as forward-leaping as you might imagine. Benchmarking results suggest it's around 15% faster than the previous gen, which you're unlikely to notice day to day. Regardless of how the processor fares against previous models, it's still darn fast. Apps load without you thinking about it, videos and photos process without you really having to wait, and you aren't going to see it fuss over any task you throw its way. Storage sizes see the option stretched to 1 terabyte, and that move is clearly aimed at the videographer keen to capitalize on the new recording features, like the yet-to-be-released ProRes, Apple's high-quality video compression format. This footage needs around 6 gigabytes for a single minute of footage, which is bound to fill up your storage quickly. So quickly, in fact, that if you buy the base model 128GB Pro Max, Apple won't let you shoot in ProRes at 4K. Now, having gone 5G in 2020, that connectivity is clearly here to stay, and it joins Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth, and Apple U1 chip for spatial awareness. There's also MagSafe for compatible chargers, cases, and other accessories. Those hoping we might get USB-C on a Pro iPhone will be waiting a bit longer. It still has the Lightning port. Now onto battery, and it's probably one of the biggest differences between this and the smaller Pro model. Battery life is always hard to determine, especially at the start of a phone's life, but it's clear that the bigger battery will afford you a more carefree lifestyle compared to other models within the 2021 range, which easily gets us into the early hours after a full day, even with considerable camera and 5G usage. In fact, light to moderate users likely won't struggle to get 2 days out of it. Now moving on to cameras, and for Apple's iPhone 13 Pro Max, it's the cameras that form the main meat of the experience, especially given that you've got a 6.7-inch display on which to enjoy the fruits of your shooting labour. There are 3 main lenses on the back packed in next to a LiDAR sensor and flash unit. All 3 sensors deliver 12-megapixel resolutions just as before, but where things differ over the 12 Pro Max is the introduction of new lenses and a new macro shooting mode. Ultra-wide, standard wide, and the 3x telephoto zoom deliver, and as we've come to expect from the iPhone range, everything works as seamlessly as possible. The only noticeable switch occurs between standard and macro mode as you get closer to a subject, which can be quite jarring at first. What can be even more frustrating is that at certain distances the automatic switching gets confused, causing the camera to constantly try and switch between the two in something of an endless loop. There is currently no way of turning it off, but when we spoke to Apple about the issue, it's clearly something the company is aware of. It told us a new setting will be added in a software update this fall to turn off automatic camera switching when shooting at close distances for macro photography and video. Thank goodness. Now, when the lenses aren't jumping between each other, however, the macro mode allows you to shoot from just 2 centimeters away from your subject. It just gives you that extra bit of versatility, and the results are really rather good. Meanwhile, the addition of that 3x optical zoom gets you just that little bit closer to stuff that's further away, which is ideal for portrait photography and certainly gives you more options when framing the shot. We found that the newly improved apertures translate to a quicker shutter response, which can help in reducing image blur. That's especially true in lower light conditions. And as night mode is now available across all 3 lenses, our nighttime test shots have delivered some quite stunning results. Now, if you're getting the bigger Pro Max model, video is probably a big reason as to why you're doing it. Because just as the big screen makes sense as a big monitor for photographers, it's great for videography as well. There's HDR video recording with Dolby Vision up to 4K at 60 frames per second, and also 4K video recording at 24, 25, 30 and 60 frames per second. ProRes video support is coming in a future update, as we've mentioned, and that's before you start adding in things like night mode time-lapse or slow-mo up to 240 frames per second. But also new is the new cinematic mode, best thought of as something like portrait mode but for video. It applies a blur effect to give your subject a greater depth of field. The feature automatically locks onto a subject's face, your pet, or the key object in the scene, and no matter where you move, it does its best to keep focus. The feature is certainly clever and adeptly shows off the iPhone's processing power. There's not even really a wait time for processing anything, but it can be prone to being overconfident. It doesn't work well, particularly with moving subjects, or when there are multiple people or objects in the scene to confuse it, so you're best off using it for creating a pull focus type shot on relatively still objects or people. Now, as we mentioned at the beginning, the only real difference between this and the smaller model is a bigger screen and a bigger battery. That big screen and battery is certainly useful for various tasks. We've enjoyed using it to shoot video and photos more than any other iPhone 13 model because of that larger scale visual. Although the 13 Pro Max doesn't move the experience along hugely over its predecessor, much as we love the smoothness provided by ProMotion, it's still the ultimate choice if you want all the features and all the stamina. I've been Cam, I'm at Cam Bunton on social media. If you want to follow me, you can do. Feel free to leave any comments or questions in the comments section down below, and if you did like this video, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe and tap the notification bell to make sure you don't miss any more. I'll see you again in the next one. Bye for now.